Welcome to my YouTube channel and to my train room. For this week's offering, I am going to publish the third episode in the trilogy of how-to videos I filmed while I was in California recently. The subject of this week's tutorial, rock carving. Yes, I know I've done rock carving videos before, but this time I'm going to take a little bit longer and go into somewhat more detail about it. So hopefully even my long-time viewers will find this one useful. Before applying any plaster, it's important to make sure that the underlying cloth is soaking wet. I'm just squirting it with a spray bottle full of water. If you don't do that, you'll end up with a very weak bond because the dry plaster will suck the moisture out of the wet stuff far too quickly. I'm spreading it with a 3-inch putty knife, and I haven't mixed anywhere near enough for this one rock face. In part that's deliberate, because if I mix any more than about 4 cups of plaster, I don't have time to finish carving it before it sets up. So I'll have to come back and do the other end with another batch. It's not ready to carve yet. I have to wait till it starts to set. If we run a knife across it, you'll see that the cuts just close straight up again. That tells us we're not ready to start yet. I'm using a product called Perfect Plaster. It comes in a yellow and blue bag. You can use plaster of Paris if you want to, or any of several other brands of plaster. It's more a personal preference than anything else. For carving it, I use a small carving tool like this one and an old 1-inch chisel. I keep testing it because once it starts to set up, it goes quickly and I can't afford to waste time. If I'm a little late starting, it's going to be a terrible job to get it carved, and it's just as likely to destroy the underlying structure. When I do start carving, what I'm going to be aiming for is a lot of small cuts, as would be represented by a man-made cut. And of course, in a deep cutting like this one, we have the added difficulty of not being able to attack it from the ideal angle because of the rock wall on the other side of the track as well. And when I do the second side, it's going to be even worse because I'm not even going to be able to see it very well without leaning over. Okay. There are a couple of areas that are starting to set. But for the most part, it's still too wet. The reason for making all these cuts in it first are so that when I get the chisel and start chipping away, it will break away in small pieces, leaving a rather pleasing effect. Now, I'm not cutting all the way back to the substructure. If you recall, I said I wanted to put the plaster on at least 1/2 inch thick. I'm only making these cuts maybe 1/4 to 3/8. If I cut all the way through to the plaster cloth, then it's likely to chip the whole lot away, and I'm going to end up with bare patches which I'm going to have to redo later. Okay, this is ready to start chipping away now.
No, my mistake, it's not quite ready. There's a few areas at the far end which I can do now, but most of it is still too soggy. Okay, just in the last few seconds, it's set up quite a long way. That makes all the difference. I mean, even if you do most of your carving with one tool, it's important to have two tools available because you'll need one to clean the other one on a regular basis. And we have to keep chipping until all the surface has been chipped away. I don't want any of the smooth plaster to remain. It wants to be fairly uneven. There's likely to be a few areas that break away completely and need to be redone, but with practice it should be possible to keep those to the minimum. And of course, with it, as with everything, practice makes perfect. I mean, if you've not done it before, it's probably worth making a test piece that you intend to throw away. You see there, everything fell away there. It's back to the bare cloth, so I'll have to go over that again. And then when I think I've got everything done, I just use a cheap 1-inch brush to get rid of all the debris. I've got to dig out the drainage ditch because it tends to get clogged up with plaster scraps. And then I'm going to brush the rock face as well to get away all the loose stuff, and that will reveal what I've got. And I want to try to get this step done before the plaster is completely set, so that I can go back and touch up various areas without too much difficulty. I can't stress too much the need to get done before the plaster goes completely set, because it's no fun carving it once it's rock hard. What we're doing on the second pass now is chipping away everything that doesn't look like a rock. Let's move the camera around, have a look at a different angle. You can't really see much at the moment because it's still white. But once there's some paint on it, it'll look a lot better. And of course, there's quite a contrast between this area, which is representing a man-made cut, and the naturally weathered rock. So I'm going to go away and mix another batch of plaster and continue with that rock face. The second batch is going to be slightly different in that I'm going to be doing part of the man-made cut and part of the natural rock outcrop on the end. First step is still the same though. Make sure the underlying plaster cloth is completely saturated. The same goes for the rock castings that I glued on earlier. Now we're mixing up the plaster. I don't think I mentioned last time, but for this application it needs to be fairly stiff. So I use less water than the instructions calls for. If I don't make it stiff enough, it won't stay on these tall vertical rock faces. I want to get that quite thick at the top there. There's slightly too much plaster for that area, so rather than waste it, I'm using it up on a small area which is off camera. So you may hear me shaping stuff that you can't see. Since some of this is on the back side where I can't easily reach, I have to get a footstool, give me some more height so I can reach over and around this area here. Okay, what I'm doing now is blending the plaster in around the edge of these castings, because ultimately I want it to look fairly seamless. I've also overlapped the piece I carved just now very slightly so that I can blend it in better, because I don't want there to be a visible seam. Now this protruding rock here at the end needs to be carved a little bit differently. It needs to look natural and weathered. So I don't want as many fissures, but I do want them quite deep, and some of them I'm going to open out where the water has run down over the millions of years and weathered them. So when I'm making these vertical cuts, you see sometimes the plaster is falling out, and that's the effect I want. And of course there'll be some strata in different directions, usually fairly parallel but not necessarily horizontal. And I might have got carried away there because I'm thinking about what I'm saying rather than what I'm doing. So I think I've messed that up. But at least with plaster it's fairly cheap, so it's not the end of the world. But this is the area I have to get right, because it's going to be difficult to chip this off and start again. And of course, this might still be salvageable, I don't know yet. I won't know till the plaster's set up a little bit more. Now often I collect up all the bits that I chip off and I make talus out of them, but at the moment I already have more than I can use on this layout, so I'm just going to vacuum it up and throw it away. That rock cut is just about done, at least the one side of it is anyway. Tomorrow I have to come back and do the difficult side.
Well, that's all there is to it. It's not particularly difficult, but it does take some practice. And as with everything, practice makes perfect. If you want to see finished photographs of this particular rock carving, just look back to the slideshow I published a few weeks ago, and you'll find some pictures of it in there. So that's all for now. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, hope you found it useful, and if you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you again next week. Bye for now.